Cuando vos digas, Eloy, ¿eh?
Ah, vale, vale. Pues inicio ya. Ya está.
Buenos días a todos.
Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon, and welcome to this edition of the webinar within the framework of the activities of preparation of the 9th Conference on Higher Education in Central America, which is organized by CSUCA. This webinar is taking place together with OBREAL Global, EU-LAC Foundation, and CSUCA, and it is named Generating, Promoting, and Applying the Results of Research. For OBREAL Global, it is an honor to participate with the colleagues from EU-LAC Foundation in this activity. Some technical details before handing over to the people who are going to give the official welcome. In the bottom toolbar of your screen, you will see an icon for interpretation. You can choose between English and Spanish in the language you wish to hear. So please activate your interpretation in the language you want to hear for the spectators, and for the panel members, also the language you are going to speak into. I also remind you that the chat is off in the webinar, but you can ask your questions and comments in the questions and answers icon that shows right next to the interpretation icon in the toolbar in your Zoom window. So with this, and thanking CSUCA again for, and EU-LAC, of course, and OBREAL Global for this process of preparation webinars for the Central American Conference. So I welcome you, and I'm going to ask the Executive Director of the Foundation, EU-LAC Foundation, Dr. Adrián Bonilla, to open officially this session. Thank you. Thank you, Nicholas. I would like to extend my greetings to all the panel members and everyone who's participating today on behalf of EU-LAC Foundation. And also I'd like to thank the organization OBREAL Global and CSUCA and all the colleagues who are organizing this webinar towards the 9th conference that will take place on the 16th and 17th of June. On this panel, which we are going to work on very important aspects that deal with the generation, promotion, and application of the results of research in this first panel. And we're going to have Dr. Maria de Giusti from the National University of La Plata, and Professor Ruth Gómez and Ernesto from the Agrarian University of Nicaragua, Alejandra Darti from the National University of Cordoba, Argentina, Peter Birle, Scientific Director of the Ibero-American Center in Berlin, Germany. This topic is extraordinarily interesting because in one way or another, it goes through the different academic agendas of a vibrant community from EU-LAC Foundation standpoint, in a bi-regional character that it exists, especially in society, in thousands of networks and connections and research groups, universities, and projects, professors in both sides of the ocean. So it's interesting because the topic of research from the standpoint of the university shows us different features in the generation of knowledge, but not only on the content of knowledge itself. In the universities, we need to work on the topic in the way, in the form in which knowledge is obtained. And this is the language that defines from conventions and everything that is acknowledged as scientific and everything that is not acknowledged as scientific. So the idea of science, either way, is a social construct. So science is built socially, historically, and that's why the concepts of science and knowledge, scientific knowledge, and the practices that come around these concepts are very dynamic in time, depending, of course, on the focus, which is dominant or not, which is a scientific project, a paradigm, etc. We've had a series of episodes in these topics. So this idea consists basically in two elements. So this is the body of knowledge, and this knowledge is produced. And this second component is extraordinarily important, especially in the teaching practice in the universities, where from investigation and thesis projects and the teaching of how to formulate a research project or problem, we have an image of whatever is canonic or not to refer to scientific knowledge. Of course, whatever we defined as scientific knowledge permanently changes. And in addition, it is not the only way to understand. So the only knowledge that exists there is this. There's a debate, an intense debate around this, around the world, especially in Latin America and the Caribbean and Europe, on this dilemma that occurs between quality and excellence in scientific research under a perspective that could be positive or constructive. But some of these elements of this debate, or this concept of excellence, that can't be just defined from one perspective of the indexed posts in databases internationally. And this is very important in Latin America, regardless of any public policy, especially throughout the last decades, which had research in international databases. And in one way or another, beyond the division, the global division of knowledge, these public policies consolidate hierarchies throughout this constructed body that is not permanent to what we consider science. So this type of practice, the increase of publications, etc., is there, but what's at play in Latin America is, and very important in Europe, is the access to knowledge and the way knowledge is distributed and the standards defined or not in the quality of the research and the quality of the publications. So if this is what is at debate, then this part or this debate would be much deeper in the statistics of knowing where and how and why a given publication is or defined, whatever is identified and which is not. So in countries like LATAM and the Caribbean, this dilemma could be discussed around different variables, the language of the publication even, while the language of the publication universally known is English. This is also a convention because, for example, languages like Spanish and Portuguese are equally global in terms of the number of people who speak it. So it's not that this needs to be defined whether one language is more prominent than another, but this is a topic of debate. And just like access is or turns around the concept of science and the fact that all the scientific research everywhere in the world, in Latin America and the Caribbean especially, is financed with public funds. But when access is restricted, dissemination is restricted, then in databases, then this research was funded with public funds, and then they become private towards the scientific knowledge and acknowledgement. This is something interesting to discuss and analyze and research, of course, effectively. And the other dilemma has to do with the content of research and its pertinence for society. In the case of the Latin American and Caribbean societies, the possibility that scientific knowledge develops in innovative practices to help or impact the reality that's taken from poverty or the problems we know, is one of the additional topics that need to be generated in this discussion. Now, without drawing terminal conclusions, of course, there's opinions about each of these topics, but I think that the pertinence of the discussion and the evolution of the logic of research and what we know as legitimate or necessary in this perspective, well, without further ado, in this introduction, I wanted to hand over to Professor Marisa de Giusti from the National University of La Plata, Argentina.
Buenos días.
Good morning, everyone. And thank you so much for your invitation to share this venue with all of you. Well, in my case, I'm going to be talking about, along the same lines as Dr. Adrián just described, the activities, programs, and projects in the National University of La Plata and the Center for Training of the Scientific Commission of Research, SEHIP. Now, to cover this story, to wrap this story, and then comment, given the short time we have, here we have a link on the side which is our main place or main facility where we have programs, projects, and activities of the CEDICI, and then it goes to SEHIP. So here we see the space of our work. As a good part of these things are going to be mentioned at least briefly. I'm going to stop here to mention that the team is developing, if you believe that this is a platform that is in Ibero-America, it is, and it is dedicated to the promotion of scientific training and development in the particular repositories of eSpace. And it is framed within a space for publications where, on the end, in the last sheet I'm going to show you, where you can have access in a free way to all of our projects, all of our work in the CEDICI repository. So I'd like to start by mentioning the first project and program where we began to work was PREBI. PREBI is the project with libraries that began as a service to supply this bibliographical reference. And it came out of the need, or was born from the need in our countries back then, and I'm talking about the year 96, of achieving scientific information, documents, projects, articles that were not found in our country. How do we arrive at PREBI? Thanks to this consortium called ISTEC, the Ibero-American Consortium for Science and Technology, which begins with, or I have the fortune of representing National University of La Plata in the year 1990. So it's a consortium that is inaugurated or starts with an initiative in Albuquerque, in New Mexico, United States, where it goes towards the south and researches the shortcomings in Latin America in terms of education and generates some initiatives. One of them is a liaison for libraries to manage scientific and technical information, which was lacking in Latin America. And in this measure, it creates PREBI. So nowadays we've achieved to bring more than 40,000 scientific documents, very hard to find now. We have the electronic library, whose services are contracted by the Ministry of Science and Technology of Argentina. So there is a high commitment, which was mentioned with open access, such that, imagine, in 1999, this is part of the organizers and the first meeting that is done creating the initiative with open access in Santa Fe, New Mexico, USA. And this initiative is signed off as one of the creators. Now, in this spirit, we created this, and now we are broadening this towards open science, as was recently commented by the panel member. Now, in the year 2001, we met in a ISPEC meeting with the repository of the three universities, Paulista University in the state of São Paulo, Brazil. And I bring this project for our university, for the National University of La Plata. And this is how CDC begins. So the service begins for intellectual creation, and the institutional repository of UOP, the first repository of the Argentinian Republic, which shelters, disseminates, and preserves scientific and intellectual production of the university, books, articles, presentations, thesis projects, multimedia work, data, learning objectives, and to date, the administrative documents of the institution to be able to comply with the transparency that is required for the society and the actions of the public university, which move forward thanks to the public funds. Now, CDC, the repository, also has collections that are destined to academic and scientific magazines from the university, and special collections from the editorial of La Plata University, the network of museums of the National University, and other dependencies. We have almost 110,000 items in the repository at this time. And apart from the materials produced, we are also sheltering other materials with institutions that we have agreements with the National University of La Plata. So those are also available in the repository. What you see in the image here in the picture is the collections, how they're grouped and organized in this repository, which is implemented in the eSpace. And there's a last collection, which is how this is organized in the different faculties and the different schools of the National University of La Plata. And to the right, we can see some collections in the screen in the repository. And also on the left, you can see the search and the aids for work and the aids that we provide. And to know about this national law, and this forces people to deposit their information in the repository and other matters, such as informing and what are the different concepts. So there is a broad service of digitalization of documents, particularly old documents, and therefore there are numerous scanners. And there's a link there on the bottom to a presentation that you can see in detail of this digital service. To the right, you will see an image of the digitalization of one of the volumes of the Cervantinas documents that is in the public library of La Trocha. And there's another link where you can see a presentation where you can see the collection in the repository, where particularly we have the Cervantinas jewels. And this digitalization is one of many that you're going to see. And they have been made with different types of scanners inside the service. Now, CDC is positioning itself in the ranking at worldwide level, and of this organization, this digital organization, and the cybermetrics laboratory. And it needs to keep that position. Now, what you see here is the panel. We use Google Data Studio to generate these visualizations and access to data, geolocation of the users' devices. And in this case, you can see for CDC, but in reality, these panels are maintained for all projects that we are managing within the repository. So as you can see, in 1 month, we have this number of users, more than 260,000 and 314,000 sessions and pages. And you can see the magnitude of access of the repository here. So a third of the visibility of the university comes from the repository. Now, what you see here is the Congress portal, which we also have. And you can think all these web spaces are interoperating transparently. In 2009, we began to manage the portal of the Nacional University portal. And right now we have more than 80 conferences open from our university with a service of development of this website under WordPress and with updates. The management and exhibition of the books and thesis projects that come from our university. We have more than 900 books, and also we are doing the maintenance there of this. So something very important is that we manage the portal of magazines of the university. These are scientific magazines, academic magazines, and dissemination magazines. And here we maintain around 80 magazines, and we keep this website space activated, and we articulate with the systems for management of scientific magazines from different areas of the National University of La Plata, like the Human Sciences faculty, communications or journalism faculty, etc. So in every case, what we have is interoperability with the repository and a strong interpretation of the metrics that we will manage in the different spaces. So as well as we articulate the different strategies. So other web spaces where we operate, we have the center where we manage, it's called the Center for Information Management Services, CESG. CESG is dedicated to studying, implementing, and optimizing the systems that have to do with the generation and management of scientific, academic, and technological production of the Commission of Geoscientific work from the Buenos Aires Provincial University, which is the equivalent organization to the National Council in Technical Matters, CONICET. So with this center of SIP, we also do all of this activity, scientific formation. So we also manage for CESG a repository, an institutional repository, also implemented in the technology of our country. So it's called SIC Digital. In this repository, we hold or host all the production of the different centers from the Scientific Commission of Research, both our own as well as associated center, shared with other institutions such as CODISEC, universities, etc. And in the same way, in the previous repository, but much younger, the SIC Digital is holding almost 10,000 items of production in the Scientific Commission of the province of Buenos Aires. And also we manage the data repository of the OMLP, La Plata Environmental Observatory, which is a data repository that belongs to the National University of La Plata, SIC and COLICEP, and was generated by a particular decision, which was the problem of flood that the city had. So these institutions in the National University of La Plata, SIC and COLICET, took projects or led projects for research that were shared and they were aimed at solving this problem. And all these projects generated a large amount of data. So it was necessary to generate this repository to shelter all of this information. And therefore, this is how ONLP operates. And it's interesting to tell you, from the beginnings, as you will have seen, our vision was access, open access, science, collaborative science, and joint work in our country, in the American continent, as a whole, and in Europe. At this time, CDC and CESG are working with the national system of digital repositories of the Ministry of Science and Technology, and we have the CDC repository and the SIC digital repository, and they are taken care of by the national system, and they are also taken care of by Tacitar, which is a platform that collects or unites the ministry, the expenses that are needed by the national repositories. So this is already harvesting 7 repositories, ours included in that set of repositories. We're also working always together with the experience that the Federal Network of Repositories of Latin America has. And we have the technical representation in the Confederation of Open Access Repositories by the National University of La Plata. And we are very close in our daily activities with this organization, which was a reference, and in this area, with Open Aire, our team is working particularly on a project that has Open Aire for the recollection of statistics, and we are keeping these meetings, particularly under the eSpace technology, and we are working on that activity. We constantly work with ISTEC. ISTEC has many projects, as you can see, not just this initiative as a liaison, but we also have projects for generation of repositories and remotely with ongoing education, and a particular project that is called Los Libertadores, which has to do with engineering for peace. In my case, I am the chairman of this consortium. I also direct this liaison activity. We keep the virtual office for international relations, institutional relations of ISTEC to contact all of Ibero-America. And the same way, every year, we produce a Congress at the level of Latin America, which is the Birle ISTEC for all of Latin America, where we share, particularly towards the end of October in Mexico. This is going to happen. This Congress is going to happen, which will be dedicated to open science this year, and all the necessary changes in policy, management, incentives to manage open science to be a reality for our countries, and to achieve all of these materials produced, not to be just from the places, from the academic and scientific places, but also from citizen science, to share and to be open and for everybody to see them and to create collaborative knowledge, and that it reaches out to all of society for the good of mankind. So thank you again. Here's the email address, and there is, or exactly, it's in the presentation that's being shared in our repository. But you will see the links to all of our work. And again, I'm going to share, well, it's already shared in CDC and SIP Digital, but I'm also going to send it with you. So I will be looking out for, with my colleague, Dr. Gonzalo Lucardi Villarreal. If anyone has any question or comment, please go ahead and ask. So thank you so much. And I look forward to your comments, and I will stop sharing my screen. Thank you so much for your presentation. Excellent, Dr. Giusti. And we will now ask Dr. Ruth Velia Gómez and Dr. Ernesto Correa from the National University of Nicaragua, Agrarian University, to give their presentation, please.
Buenos días.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Good afternoon. On behalf of the Integrated System for Documentary Central American Information and our Agrarian University, Engineer Ernesto and myself are going to share the experience we've had with the Central American Repository of CSUCA. So this is an experience of collaborative effort where all of the systems have participated, all of the members of CSUCA. So this has been an effort that has been for several years in the repository, but started in 1994, approving the commission to evaluate the library systems. And in 2004, it is consolidated as a system of CSUCA, of one of the systems of CSUCA. So this has been our history throughout the years of this information system. We have two very important organizations where we all participate, all the directors of the different library systems. And we have an executive committee, which is integrated by several countries. And I represent the coordinator and deputy coordinator. So this is the operative aspect of our work. Now, the goals of CITCA and CSUCA, we have the promotion of mechanisms of library cooperation, we have training, promoting the development of collections. And this last one is very important because this is where we have the guidelines to create the Central American Repository. And this has allowed us to strengthen connectivity between the library systems. This is our logo, and the repository was launched in 2016, so it's 5 years old, and definitely it was an event in the 8th University Conference that was done in Panama, and we launched the repository of the collective catalog, and the goal basically was to preserve and disseminate scientific production of public universities in Central America. For us to have this repository is like having the treasure of Central America, because at Central American level, we dare to say that it is one of the best collaborative efforts that we've had, and we are disseminating this at the Central American level, and promoting it for us is very important. And this venue that we've been given, we think, is one of the goals to promote this repository. How did we do it? Well, basically, this has implied training to the staff of the different universities. There was a whole process that took place of creating awareness for the library staff regarding the open access, what it meant. And I think that this for us has been very important. So we couldn't create a repository without, or if the staff was not clear as to what open access meant. And this is what we've had in this case with open access. Also in the assemblies in 2013, we approved the metadata Central American policy for information. So we can't talk about access to information if the information is not organized. And this is where actually we have the importance of partnerships of the researchers, the academia, and the universities. So this is what has allowed for us at Central American level to have the repository in Central America. in CSUCA. But also, this has meant the preparation and promotion of the repositories, and a declaration was prepared of CSUCA to be approved by SOCA, by the members of SOCA. And this picture for us is historical because here was the approval of the declaration in Honduras of the repository, so that the member universities know about this initiative and to support us. So this gave way for all the library systems and the members to implement their repository and create their policies so that the repositories could actually be a reality at the level of the Central American countries and universities. And the support that CSUCA gave at this time, SUCA endorsed or embraced this open access at the time of the declaration. And this helped us in the library systems and each one of them in each one of our countries. Here we also have the advancements in repositories in 2015. And as I said, in 2015, also 2016, we, the National Agrarian University, presented our progress of the collective catalog. And this was one of the reasons why in 2016, in the SUCA conference, this official launch was made for products that were very important for CSUCA. We have the Central American catalog. So I wanted to mention that this Central American catalog, let's remember that not all the production, academic production of the university is digital. So the collection that we have in the library, we have available in this Central American catalog. And for other areas, we also prepared an exchange agreement with the user of our universities to have some materials, printed materials, which has helped us a lot, because here we have the information that is printed, but in the repository, Central American repository, we have digital information. And of course, this is of open access and it is available. So with this, CSUCA has created history at Central American level, because many times academic production, scientific production is envisioned, and I think that this is the first step for this visualization, rather. So this is a starting point from the experiences of the universities, of the experience of the virtual libraries, because we couldn't start from scratch. And we also start from the experiences of the repositories of OCR, the University of Costa Rica, and they already had repositories, and the rest of the universities, we joined in this initiative. And who's been the key player in this process? Some of the university authorities, they approved this declaration, but also their support, so that each one of the universities and our repositories were a reality. The directors of library systems, the information staff, we've tried to create those synergies at the IT level with the universities, but also with the research directors and the teachers and the specialists in open access. Open access is a reality, and we wanted to embrace it as one of the principles of this repository. And who has been the most benefited from this initiative? It's the users. So I want to highlight the support of the National Agrarian University, because this university made available its servers, its staff, technical and professional, and we are the ones who manage this. But undoubtedly, all of this would not have been possible without the support of each and every one of the directors of the library systems implementing their institutional repositories, because this Central American repository is the effort of a whole team and roster of repositories. So I would now hand over to my colleague Ernesto Correa, because he's going to explain the technical aspects. And we certainly have many challenges at the Central American level still, and we need to have access to open data, and open science is a reality, but we are still missing this awareness of the academia researchers from the universities so that the information is actually open, of open access to everyone. Thank you. Professor Correa. Good afternoon all, and as Velia has mentioned, the Central American repository has been collaborative. Why? Because many times, many institutions and from years back have had repositories in different technologies, and many of them, for example, the University of Costa Rica use eSpace, others like the University of Salvador, even the universities in Nicaragua use ePrint. So all of this was a challenge to be able to implement the Central American repository. And as Velia mentioned, first, we worked on the topic of the policies in Central and America to be able to optimize this metadata. And then after this, many institutions had to do some records, especially the Agraria University, in regard to the records of the technologies. And then they had to do or make some corrections and improvements in metadata to be able to harvest the same. So what technologies are used? What technologies are do the universities have? So each university has different technologies, and for example, the University of Costa Rica uses eSpace, as I mentioned. The University of Nicaragua uses NIPRINT, but our technologies that we use for this repository is Find. This is the technology that we have identified for the harvesting of metadata. So we had to use this technology to be able to deploy this Central American repository. The next slide, please, if you will. Please allow me, I'm going to share the presentation myself so that
Bien, entonces,
very well. So as I was mentioning, we are using, to be able to do the implementation of this repository, the Find technology. There's many initiatives that have this reference that use this technology to harvest their metadata. And to date, the Central American repository has 19 indexed repositories, more than 98,000 digital objects available full-time, and also presents more than 26,000 scientific articles, 37,000 thesis projects, and 438 are full texts. Because of these statistics, we use the Matomo technology, also used by the reference, to control the downloads and the visits and all the metrics we need to analyze our system. So here we have the reference we use for the presentation. I am going to now that we're here, I'm going to share a little bit of the platform. And the URL that we have is called CSUCA repository. And as I mentioned before, in this platform, we have more than 19
de la Universidad de Costa Rica, la Universidad Nacional Autónoma de Nicaragua, la Universidad de San Carlos, etc. Tenemos más de 98,000 registros a texto completo, como les comentaba, y como las bondades que ofrece Bluefind, se puede hacer recuperación por facetas, se puede hacer
and this could be delimited by forms, by author, by language, by subject, and publication date. So all of this in full text. And this has been an effort that has been mentioned before, that's collaborative, and it's been one of the star products that is exposed to the international community for the development of research and scientific production of the region. It's also important to mention this repository of CSUCA is in global. So our indexed repositories are in the reference, also in open items, open IDE, and another initiative that contributes to the visibilization or the visibility of scientific production generated in our area. Thank you so much for this forum.
Muchas gracias por la presentación.
Thank you for your presentation, and we continue now and hand over to Professor Peter Birle, the Scientific Director of the Ibero-American Scientific Research Center. Good afternoon, good morning. Thank you so much for your invitation and to participate in this event. It's I'm impressed really by all the efforts being made already as we speak in different regions and countries in Latin America. And briefly, I want to introduce our institute and our efforts in the direction of open science and open access. And I must admit that from the philosophical standpoint, we are 100% aligned with the presentations given by Professor Giusti and all the colleagues from Central America. The Ibero-American Institute of Berlin is an extra university institution that is 90 years old. So it's an institution of a long tradition, and it's a hybrid perhaps. So it is known for its library and research center, and we're conducting a lot of cultural and scientific activities. So on the one hand, we host knowledge with our specialized library with materials on Latin America, Caribbean, Spain and Portugal, and as I've already said, for both pillars. To give you an idea of our library, we have more than 1 million books of all the countries, especially the countries in Latin America, Caribbean, but not just books and magazines, but we also have a lot of electronic documents, maps. We have recordings and other kinds of materials in the library, and we also have special collections of different nature. So these are many times the materials that are unique, and we only have those here in our institution in Berlin. We have recordings, we have video, maps, pictures, slides, posters, newspaper articles, and we have more than 300 legacy items, manuscripts, letters, postcards, telegrams, that are dedicated to studying different regions and countries in Latin America. Regarding the idea of open science, we are now preparing a new strategy, but several elements of that strategy are underway for a long time now. And I would say that globally, that strategy of open science shows or includes 4 elements: the digitalization strategy, a strategy for Google Publishing regarding everything that is our own publications program. Also, with regard to that, institutional repository, which is already working since 2016, and a 4th point, which is perhaps what has been commented the least in this event. Everything that deals with research, open research data. We are also preparing our ideas and strategies for that. With regard to that digitalization strategy, I think we have to mention 3 elements. On the one hand, we have the digitalization of materials to protect sensitive material. We are also conducting a lot of joint projects, digitalization with national partners and many times also international partners in Latin America, and several countries with national libraries and other libraries, institutions for research, to add jointly and reciprocally with digital collections and to respond to the demand that is being generated. And of course, a third topic is always how to make available to everyone those materials. We are doing this in cooperation again with several national and international institutions. And I just want to give you some examples of the digital collections from the accessible institutions or institutes through the website of the institution. Here you can find free access to all the materials, all digital. And in fact, many times these are like theater magazines and the Creole Library, which is like bulletins or flyers even, or cultural magazines from Latin America from the 20th century, early 20th century, no longer accessible on paper. This is almost lost, these materials. These are legacy materials, but also we have images, and these are the digital collections that, from what I've mentioned, in our institutional repository, about 5 or 6 years ago, we scanned the whole program of publications of the institution from 1930. And in the repository, you'll find more than 300 volumes and projects and more than 3,000 documents in total that will grow. So the magazines that we are publishing work through the platform that is of open access, open journal systems. And these are magazines that still are along the lines of open science. And one last point is the cooperation strategies, because for us, as a German institution that is understood as a source between Germany, Europe, and Latin America, we cooperate with EU-LACFoundation, led by Adrián Bonilla. So this idea of connecting with different partners in Europe, also in Latin America, is very important. So that's why we are members of Claxo. We also have the materials here of the virtual library of Claxo. And you can find it through the online catalog of our library. We also cooperate with how to index or how to have less sort of colonialism in this activity. So how to take care or take into account the perspective of Latin American and Caribbean countries. We also participate at Index for the promotion of those ideas and projects with Latin American partners, and we also follow the lines and the ideas of open science. So that is my 7 minutes that I was given. So, of course, if there's any questions, I would love to hear them. Thank you.
Muchas gracias. Muchas gracias, Peter.
Thank you, Peter. We now hand over to Dr. Alejandra Marcela Munardi from the National University of Córdoba in Argentina. Thank you very much. Good morning. Thank you for having me. Thanks to the organizers of the Higher University Council of Central America, the EU-LACFoundation. Thank you for allowing me to share this with you. What is happening in the province of Córdoba in our national university. So very interesting positions and keys here of what has been said here in the events and defined for this event. So these words are key for the development of my presentation. Policies, tools, and strategies to communicate, assess, and harness the results of research. So results management, performance and quality, and accountability in the supply of services to society. I'm going to go back for a minute. And here, I wanted to tell you that the National University of Córdoba was founded in 1613, and here we are over 400 years old. We have 15 faculties, 1 astronomical observatory, 2 secondary schools, 145 research centers, 25 libraries, 17 museums. We're the 2nd university in the country in number of students after the Buenos Aires University and La Plata. We have 161,722 students, and we have 331 undergrad programs, graduate and postgraduate programs, over 10,000 professors, researchers, according to the categories of our National Council for Research, and in different categories. And we have 23 units of CONICET in Argentina. That's the National Council for Scientific Research that works with the universities and research institutions and makes their researchers available to them. So when I read this proposal of the event, I was asking myself some questions. What do we do to see what we do with the results of the research that are produced in the university? In 2014, we created the Open Knowledge Office, the first in Latin America. And instead of having a mission, I asked why we wanted this office, what for? And Marisa de Giusti already mentioned this, to comply with the national law 899 of 2013, regulating the entire country and universities, both public universities and research institutes, on the publications that should be made available by the researchers in the repositories, and research data, which is a new topic that began just October last year under a portal that's called Citar. It was mentioned by Marisa, who's also participating in this panel. As my colleague Peter also said, we're just starting on this topic. To envision intellectual production I have nothing but to mention that we have a repository, as every repository that is going around the world. This is the Digital University Repository. The link I will share after the slides, and it also includes special collections in museums, and I'm going to mention this later on. So why did we create this? To create a favorable culture, open access to knowledge, and to create awareness to the academic community. Apart from that, to promote scientific magazines and also quality and accessibility, and this is very important, to address the topics regarding the organizations, management, visibility, and the process of review, peer reviews, and to define editorial policies. We are starting this year. We're going to work with several experts, editors, to regulate the policies in the magazines that we were just told there's 87 of them. So it's a whole team that is behind this, looking at all of our initiatives and academic, scientific magazines in the portal of the university. So others also to show, and speaking a little bit as a function of our event, as we said, the rendering of accounts or accountability with the university and the society at large. So in the repository, it allows us to make available the data in order to identify indicators in scientific production, indicators for the institutional comparison at the level of articles. This information that we're going to see in this short time is taken from a document called the Memoirs, and I'll show you what that is, to check the impact of these digital publications, to foster the collaborative efforts of the researchers, national and international, and to foster social responsibility. This is of fundamental importance. So this is for consultation purposes. We are all on the same path, more inclusive and responsible science. So I was also listening carefully to the presentations, and I want to congratulate all my predecessors here because we are also working jointly with the people from the university. The university works with the Secretariat of Science and Technology of the university, and we have these political academic strategies to ensure the progress of open access. So we are also working with our secretariat and also for documentary information. This is our comprehensive system for management. Every teacher, professor, researcher from the university has to complete all their information and to understand what they have to do in their research in all of their elements and their systems called Sistema. So we also work permanently with the magazine editors. And also, it was also mentioned by Ruth and so with the University of Cordoba, we have this OCA office. So we all have library specialists and they're acting as promoters, and they have data. We have permanent collaboration by the team and with the general central area. This is a good example of consensus. This is what we defined with the institutional policies of open access to the National University of Cordoba, which was a demand of Act 899 to have internal policies in the universities and repositories, but also internal policies on open data that we started in 2021 to work with in development. And who participated in this consensus? This was, we took 1 year to reach this consensus, and this advisory council in science and technology was integrated by the Secretariat of Science and Technology from the faculties. And this consensus, this advisory consensus, was integrated by the academic centers, 15 faculties, and this advisory council integrated by the secretariats of science and technology and faculties, and the council of directors of the National University of Cordoba, which I was mentioning before, the network of directors. So this advisory council in National University of Cordoba in the faculties of philosophy has a methodology where this major is taught, and also its legal terms. So there was a lot of intensive work, permanent work with the secretaries, with the teachers, the library specialists, or librarians, and attorneys. And there's a question that I can answer, but not without Marisa. So we're talking about the embargo on the seizure on the magazines. So they're going to answer that questions, I'm sure. So this was done in 2017 after intensive debate, and it is approved unanimously by the higher council, which is the maximum instance of the university for policies for open access for publications in the National University of Cordoba. How does the office work? We work with our repository. We adhere to a national institution of digital repositories of science and technology, and they report to the ministry. So we have permanent training for the achievements on data curation. We have Sistema, training, advisory for editors, and the software everyone uses. So we have editorial management and repositories, databases, and we strictly address the digital repositories. So we have a team inside the office in open knowledge. So some of them are librarians, some not, but it's particularly collaborating with the errors and difficulties that we have. So here, and as I mentioned, all the researchers complete their resume, and here we have a system that is provided by the National Council, and there is an application that we promote from this area with the Secretariats of Science and Technology called Memoria Sigeva, which is an annual summary of all the activities, developments, and publications for each professor, researcher that is visualized with each faculty year after year. And we have in every faculty since 2013 to date, we have an annual summary of everything that this team does and the team of researchers in X faculty. There had been a need to migrate that information, and these documents have to be sent to the repository. So the colleagues of ours, together with the Information Secretariat, developed a tool in the migration of metadata that is a program that facilitates migration of metadata and files stored in the Sigeva memoirs, and they go to the repository. So this is how I've mentioned it, because once the migration is done, everything regarding all the policies have to do with data. So this is an intervention of the knowledge and of the librarians to see if that document has the metadata or if the full text is loaded, because if the article is seized because it's part of the commercial circuit, then it is on standby in the dark until the publisher allows to bring it. So This development is a development that we have for free distributed, and this allows us, so not just in Singeva, but we have other possibilities for the tool. So we have about 5,000 images, and we've migrated this information with the tool. We work with David and everyone else, so it's very flexible, this development. And this also called my attention, another concept in the scope of the event, so which is to show the general work. And we have a paper, which is a thesis by Dr. Ana Maria del Valle Fulguese about visual inspection in the precocious detection of uterine cancer. The interesting part about this, for the impact of this paper particularly, is who was looking into it, who was querying it. And we have the paper shows in the repository on the same day that it was inaugurated, which was November 2012. And there was an important number of consultations. This paper only takes 0.74% of the visits to the page of the repository. And as you can see, this information is interesting here. Who is querying into it? Well, in this paper, we have this number of visits, and these countries are the ones that take the highest numbers in percentage. For example, Peru, 15,278, Guatemala, 6,226, then Bolivia, Mexico, Nicaragua, Honduras, Argentina, quite low. And so this indicates in a way that open access allows us to grow, evolve, and share what we have to look into. And the path to science is not an easy path. This is not easy, and there's many obstacles. Dr. Bonilla mentioned this. There's a certain resistance by the, or reluctance by the editorials, by the publishers. I don't want to surpass my time, but here we have all our colleagues watching you, so we really thank you. I want to forget mentioning Domenico, Paola Muran, Alexis Verde, Patricia Garcia, and we are the ones that are here connected, and this is our institutional page and our contact for any other information, any other consultation. Thank you so much for your invitation. Thank you for your presentation. I would like to offer the possibility to the participants to have a short comment to wrap up these topics that you've mentioned, and perhaps help to, I'd like to ask all the people who have been with us, from your standpoint, do the repositories and instruments that have been presented, have they been useful to generate internationalization logic in the academic dynamics in your institutions? And there is a question to Marisa apropos the Argentinian law, where it forces or obligates the uploading of information. So do you have a preprint, or do you have an embargo type upload on the repositories? How does this apply? Marisa is gone now, but Marcela Nardi might be able to help us answer this question. But let's start off with this last possibility to speak. And I would suggest it is around 3 minutes. And let's start with Ruth, Velia, and Ernesto from the National Agraria University of Nicaragua. Undoubtedly, the repositories have allowed the visibility of our country in academic production, and this is shown by the level of downloads there have been in the last years, but also the repositories are at institutional level where they play a very important role, because the researcher also has the opportunity to make available their communication, and this, whether the article is seized or not, needs to be clearly established in the policies. And this is one of the reasons why in the Tatacama Declaration in Honduras, which was for the promotion of repositories, it was very important for each one of the institutions and universities to establish their policies. And these policies are made with or in coordination with the research or the academics and the authorities. And this is what is fundamental here. And I think we have many challenges facing us, because in the universities, not all universities have their repositories implemented. And if they are not implemented, then they will not be harvested. And also at the level of other repositories in Latin America. This is another step we have to take, but undoubtedly, the repositories are playing a very important role in the visibility of the scientific production of our universities. Thank you so much. Peter, please. Yeah, thank you so much. Very briefly, again, I think that a lesson from today's event for me and for our institution is to become aware of these strategies and activities that are already well advanced in many regions in Latin America with regard to open access and open science. And of course, recently, as was said by my colleague Ruth, also in regard to the research data, something I would like to mention is that it's not only about topics or technical subjects, but it's something very important from our standpoint is ethical matters. If I see colleagues that are working, for example, in social anthropology, they are there, and we have many materials in our files, but it's this is not just as simple as saying we're going to put it all for open access, and there is a lot of sensitive material, and this is an aspect that speaking of open science, we need to take this into account beyond any other topics that have been mentioned. And for me, I repeat, and I hope to understand with the colleagues, we're in contact already, but I expect to be able to institutionalize some of the contracts through this event. Thank you so much. Thank you, Peter. Just one moment, Marcela. And the question is to Marisa, and Gonzalo Villarreal is going to answer this. He is joining us as well. Gonzalo, please, the floor is yours. Hello, good morning. Thank you for the invitation. Yes, the question had to do with the articles and repositories. We respect what the law says, which is for articles and magazines up to 6 months, and with raw data, I think I'm not sure how many years now, but the author of the book or the article has to justify why they need this embargo. So the law contemplates where there could be any patent, and there has to be a justification. So for all the production of the university, articles and from the magazines and universities, this is in there, and there's an internal circuit between the portal and the repository to integrate the production. So this does not require intervention by the authors, whether they are or not from UNB. Thank you, Gonzalo. Alejandra, Marcela. Yes, regarding the information, this is a different challenge. So we will be addressing these 6 months of the law here. It says we have to wait 6 months for the publication of a paper in the commercial circuit. In this case, with our internal policies, we have, or we respect the policies of the commercial circuit, and otherwise it would have been exposed, but it's done with the scientific research unit, and we have the metadata that we have with the work that is under seizure until they are freed, or there are some that never release the possibility to have public access. But something also that was very discussed broadly during our policy definitions for UMC is the thesis projects, graduate and undergraduate. So we should wait those 6 months, it was said, but we have given this possibility to our authors. So this is a document that makes it available to generate from there some work that is not published in international magazines. So if we don't or had not published this thesis, then the form would have been or would lack the possibility to be not published. So this was something that was requested by the academic affairs people and a third party with justification. So the metadata is always something to consider. Thank you so much. Thank you, Marcela. I thank everyone who joined us in this these presentations, and now I would like to ask Francisco Alarcón Alba, Academic Director and General Secretary, Attaché of CSUCA, to give the final conclusions. Good morning, everyone, and we're very grateful, thankful for your contributions, your interventions, your experiences, your comments. Today's event is part, like I've said, of a series of online forums with a discussion that are a preparation for the Central American University Conference, CSUCA, which is a strategic event, and it takes place in Central America every 5 years and will take place this June in the virtual modality from the National Autonomous University of Honduras. Today's event, as we've already mentioned and stated, has been focused on the management of the results from research conducted by all the institutions. And this is one of our main concerns in each of these countries. What do we do with this information and the data obtained from the research, and how to adequately estimate the results of this investigation to show and to transfer the information effectively and to use it to support the solution of issues. And that is our main reason for being in public universities, and for the accountability. Also for the supply of executive services to societies, companies, local organizations, etc. And also to provide visibility and relations that give value to our work. So the issue here is we believe that there is a need to dialogue, a need for dialogue between different instances of the universities. On the one hand, there is a whole boom of the international organizations focused on, many of them, on the indicators and publications and scientific publications. And most of these indicators that are used are based on information from the major databases, acknowledge, and so many more that include a good amount of these commercial publications where you have to pay. And once it's published, then there was a seizure of the result, as Alejandra Marcela said, and some statistics that are never released or never release their result. So there is a process where the training of scientists and the financing of projects, and this is done with public funds. And this is private because it is published in a very important journal in these databases, and therefore they are used for the international rankings that allow us to assess the quality and the impact of the universities. So it is contradictory. This was funded with public funds, but at the end of the day, they end up being private. And therefore, this whole debate and this whole international movement in open science and in obtaining the information and the results from research and the data, and give the public access to them. But in Central America, we are a little bit, let's say, sort of walking in different directions. And on the one hand, we are talking to our researchers and professors to grow in their academic career and to grow, to have good publications, and we have indexed magazines, and in the editorial circuit. Also, on the other hand, we have an editorial policy, and this is more open and more access. So maybe our researchers perhaps are in conflict, and it's necessary, and in this conference in Central America, to help as a space or a forum to debate, to reflect, and to reach consensus about what we are doing on the one hand at the regional policy levels, and what we do with the other hand, which is to have academic policies, promotion, etc. And everything that should be congruent with our policies and open access to society. So I think that what you've shared is very interesting, very valuable, and I wanted to thank you. In these events, we have a short time generally, and if there was opportunity for some comments on your side, it would be what were your experiences about articulating institutional coherence to diverse policies, but at the end of the day, that should converge with the policies of evaluation of the academic career for professors, etc., with the editorial policies and open access to our institutional repositories. This is what I wanted to say. How do we manage, how do we achieve having these spaces for dialogue and articulation, and to several countries and several universities? Like the case of Central America, there's 8 small nations, 8 different higher education systems, but that need to coordinate, articulate, and work together in a process of integration. So your comments about this are very valuable to us, and the conference is an opportunity to be able to discuss, debate, exchange good experiences and practices on those topics. So I wanted to give you all, extend an invitation and to invite you to participate in the next webinar that we have planned on this series, international series of preparation for conferences. Next week, actually, we will be conducting this on Tuesday, the 20th of April in this platform. There will be another event, and the topic of this event will be the framework of qualification and harmonization, regional level, and innovation in Central America. We will have presenters from Latin American countries, Central American, and European countries who will share with us their experiences in their institutions. And we expect you all. So I say goodbye with these comments, and I wish you all a very productive and successful day. Thank you. Thank you, Francisco. Thank you, Alejandra, Marcela, Peter, Gonzalo, Ernesto, Ruth. I hope we continue to meet in these interesting webinars that we have with OBREAL, with CSUCA, regarding the Central American University Conference. Thanks to everyone who's joined us in this event and for the information that we've received, and that it allows us to have a very comprehensive view of the trends of the organization of scientific information in the region and in Europe in general, which has one of the most important repositories this side of the Atlantic on Latin American affairs. So thank you all and goodbye. Thank you all.